Um, my hope would be that he can be the guy that I see every day in practice, the guy that I see every day that I've been here. I think he's a guy that's really comfortable with who he is. I think he's a guy that brings a lot of energy and excitement to the team, not just through his play, but just by his personality. And I'd love to see him, like everybody, have the opportunity to be healthy and play every down and lead our team to a championship. And I have no reason to think that wouldn't be the case based on what I've seen so far.
Jared Casey has lost about 10 pounds, kind of reshaped his body and everything. What have you seen from him so far?
Yeah, wow, 10? First I would just say Jared is one of the most consistent workers on our team. Just an incredible consistency, willingness to prepare, willingness to do whatever it takes. And often you see a guy who's as far along in his career as Jared is, and they're thinking about fine-tuning things. They're talking about just getting a little bit better at maybe some more elaborate pieces of the game, some more sophisticated parts of the fundamental piece of the game, as opposed to I'm going to go out and try to come in the best shape of my life and drop whatever 3 or 4% body fat. That's hard to do, I mean, I wish I could drop 1% right now, but commitment. That's what I see from him. I see commitment and a willingness to do whatever it takes. And I would say everything that we've seen from him in the past, I would expect to see that and just a little bit better at everything.
What was the process like with Leighton Cure, in terms of you guys kind of finding him and then that transfer recruitment and everything, and what have you seen from him?
Well, I guess I would just say as a new guy who really hasn't spent much time recruiting this state, one of the first things that I was trying to do is just get to know a lot of the coaches in the state and the area that I'm responsible for. And as I did that, began to get to know a number of different people. And so, he was a name that I knew of, but then when he got in the portal, I said, well, let's see if he's something. And I had known that he was a high school quarterback, and had known just from his reputation that he was a really good athlete. And so I began to dig into it a little bit more, talking to a lot of the people at his high school, his family, as many different people as I could about him, and just was super impressed with everything that I saw, and really felt like he was someone that was a lot more than what people had given him credit for. And maybe like some other guys who had played a different position in high school than what they're playing now, maybe get under recruited, small school.
COVID year too.
COVID year, far western Kansas. Sure. And so I think there were a lot of things that contributed to that. Watching his high school film and his early film from Fort Hays, thought he was a guy that had the requisite skill set. But then when I watched his most recent film from this past season, I could tell he was a guy that really worked at his game, and you could see the jump that you would hope to see from a guy who was now becoming a tight end. But I saw a guy who was really athletic, could run and catch. And so that, on top of everything that I heard about him as a person, just being, the hardest working kid in the school and the guy that everybody looks up to. And you see that now.
When you have a player who used to be a quarterback and he's not the only one on offense, just how does that kind of inform the way they play whatever their current position is?
I think they come in with a little bit bigger view of the football world, and hopefully they have a better idea of what the big picture is. It also depends what kind of, what level of quarterback were they playing and what style of offense and all that, and he ran the ball a lot in high school, but has a decent arm too, so maybe we'll give him an opportunity for a tight end pass. I have thrown a pass with a tight end in a game, so it wouldn't be the first, and we're ready for it. But yeah, I think he's got a good big picture of the game.
Jeff, when you look at the tight end group, what do you see just early in fall camp?
Competition. A lot of competition. And the thing that I said in my first tight end meeting was that everybody, and I looked at Jared and I looked at Trevor and pointed at them specifically and called them out by name, including you, Jared, you, Trevor, guys who have played, has to earn their reps. And I think we've got more competition than we had in the spring. We have more bodies, we have more able bodies. We have a number of different guys who could do a number of different things, and that's a good thing. Competition finds the best in most people. The saying is competition brings out the best in everyone, and I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think it brings out the best in the best competitors. And so the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks, we'll see. But I think there are a lot of guys who could find themselves on the field this year.
We talked to Lance yesterday about the rule change allowing analysts to coach on the field, and I'm just wondering your thoughts on the impact that can have, especially as someone who brought a couple analysts with him here to get you.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an advantage for everybody, but ideally it's an advantage. I mean, first off, you think about, okay, what an advantage that is for Kansas football, what an advantage that is for all the programs that are coaching. But really, first, it's an advantage for our players. Our players get to be coached more. They have twice the resources now, twice the information at their disposal. And the way college football is, as volatile as it is, teams like us often have guys with a lot of experience on our staff who are in the position of analysts but have just as much knowledge as a lot of other guys, and in a lot of cases sometimes maybe even more knowledge than a guy who's the full-time position coach, so to speak. And so what I think it does, it puts more eyes on our players, and it gives them more opportunities to be coached, and then it gives those guys, our analysts, opportunities to improve and do things that, I guess do the thing that they love to do. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that we all do, but coaching is what everybody wants to do.
Over the next 3 weeks, who are some of the guys you're hoping will take kind of that next jump? You talked about Leighton at Fort Hays State. Anyone you hope takes that jump over the next couple weeks?
Yeah. Normally I would have a pretty good list with as much experience as we have coming back on this offense. I think I would say you probably got 3 different buckets you could put guys in. There's that bucket of guys who have played a lot and are really good players, Jalen and all of our receivers and the running backs, and guys who have a lot of ability and a lot of experience. Well, for a team to win a championship, your best players have to play great. And we need all of those guys to play better than they've ever played if we're going to win a championship. Playing like we played last year isn't good enough. Even though it was a great season, that's not good enough to win a championship. And so first, all those guys need to take another step. And then I would say there are a few of those guys that are newcomers or young guys. We don't have as many on this team right now. Leighton would be one, Carson, another tight end, handful of linemen. Those guys we're trying to find out a little bit about, and so you'd like to see them take another step. You'd like to find out a little bit more about who they are. And then there's a group in the middle that have proven that they're in the mix, but not quite sure if they're really good enough to help us win games in this league or not. And I would say the bulk of that lies with the offensive line. And so you could say that probably as a group, I'm looking for that entire unit to take a step forward.
You added Bryce Foster about 6 weeks ago. What does he need to do to get situated and stake out his place in the offensive line?
What does he do?
Yeah, well, what does he need to do to?
He's got to put in a lot of time and effort. He's got to prove to his teammates that he's the guy who should be our starting center or guard. He could play guard, but he's got to prove that he's one of our best five. If he's going to be our starting center, he's got to prove that he's got the work ethic, the communication skills, and the leadership necessary to be the guy that's making a lot of the calls and directing a lot of the things for us up front. And I think the offensive scheme that he's played in is one that was fairly versatile, and so he comes in with a pretty broad knowledge of the game, and I think that helps him. The rest of it is just terminology and verbiage. Somebody may have called something one word when the center and the left guard are going to work a combination block, and we might call it a different word, and that's just learning a little bit of new language. And I think this summer he's already done most of that, and so I would say it's just really proving that he's the guy.
Jeff, at that center spot with Foster, who else is kind of competing at center?
Yeah, so brought in Shane Baumgartner last spring, and I thought he had a solid spring. It looks to me thus far that he's had a really good summer. I think he's made a lot of progress. I see a guy that's playing with a little bit more confidence, just a certainty about what he's doing, and a real focus. Mike Ford has played some center in the past, and I would say is a guy that could be in the mix, but is also very comfortable playing guard as well.
Coach, how do you keep the rest of your wide receiver room locked in and focused and know that they're valued even when those top three guys might get up open targets?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would start with the way that we practice is a little bit unique. We, in most drills, run 2 huddles, and in doing that, we get more reps than probably most people do in a shorter amount of time, and more players get reps, more players get opportunities. And so you come out of fall camp and spring ball with everybody really having had opportunities, and that's the first thing everybody needs. Everybody needs an opportunity. Beyond that, I think once you get to the point where those play calls are limited, those guys need to feel like they're a part of it. And even if they're not going to be in, I don't know, half the time or 40% or whatever, if I'm a guy that's got a role, I know what they want. They want a coach that's going to say, hey, we're going to create a role for you because we believe you can do these things, and you're going to have an opportunity to do them once we get to game planning. So right now, I don't think it's really an issue. I think when it will become an issue will be once we get to a game plan week.
Is there a goal to use Devin in a more versatile way this year?
A goal of what?
To use Devin in a more versatile way this year than maybe he has been in the past?
Devin?
Yeah.
Well, I think there are certain pieces of the game for him. I know there are that he wants to improve in. And I think each of those will make him a more versatile player, becoming a better blocker, whether he's blocking in pass protection, which is a big deal for NFL running backs. He knows he can improve there. Blocking for the other back. We got, 2 really talented backs on this team. And with that being the case, there are times where we need to have both those guys on the field at the same time, but there's only one football. And so the other guy sometimes can be a diversion, but not always. Sometimes there's call for that guy to go and block as well, even in the run game. And so I think that would be one. I think he recognizes he can improve as a route runner and a receiver, and certainly can see that being a piece of it as well. I would say those 2 things would be the main things.
Along those same lines, Jalen said yesterday he thinks that there'll be guys lined up in different spots more so than we've ever seen, guys moving around, different things. And he obviously didn't give anything away, and you won't either. But I wonder, is that your influence, or is that sort of just the natural progression of things? Or
Yeah, I think it's both.
Okay.
I think it's both. I would say, I hope what he says is true. How much of that we can do is dependent on how much our players can handle. You know, you would love to, as a coach, you would love to have, if you had 75 plays in a game, you would love for every one of those plays to look like you shifted and you motioned and you had misdirection and nobody knew where the ball was going. Like every play looks like a trick play. Like everybody goes, why don't you run more of those? Because they're hard, you know, they're hard to execute. There are a lot of moving pieces to those. But you'd love to be able to say that you can do as much of that as possible. And the limit of it is only how much our players can actually handle. The positive is I think they can handle quite a bit. And what's been done here already has proven that they can do quite a bit. And I got to give Andy and the other coaches credit for that. I mean, I've walked into a situation where we not only have talent and experience, but there's a system in place that the players know and are able to execute with a lot of moving pieces at a very high level. And so what I'd like to do is just do even more of it. And it's something that I've always believed in, and at some times in my career have been able to do more or less of it depending on the situation. But I would say we're in position right now to do more than I've ever done.
Anything else, Coach Grimes? All right.
All right.